Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere workshop, Building an Offline Capable Application. I'm Dave McCormick, and I'm joined here today by our solution engineer, Chris Martin. Now last week, Chris showed you how to build a data-driven application, but we didn't get into offline capabilities. This week we're going to do something a lot more ambitious. We're going to take that project that we built last week. We're going to show you how to make it work in an offline situation. We're actually going to deploy it using PhoneGap to an Android device, and we're going to place the application itself up onto ZebraHost, and we're going to connect to a database that isn't local but is in fact stored at yet another service provider, I think this time over at GoDaddy, just to see how Alpha works across multiple systems. So a lot to cover, and let's get started. So let's start here. Hello, Chris. Are you there?
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Okay.
Can you speak up a little bit? I'm not getting great audio from you here.
Okay. Let's see. How's this? Any better?
That's good.
Okay. Alrighty. Show my screen.
Yep.
Which screen shall I show? Windows 7 Parallels.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at one with a phone and with a UX component with a list control in it.
Yeah, this is what basically we're going to be creating today. This is the one that's hosted on ZebraHost, and this is actually my device. I'm using MobiZen, which allows me to mirror my actual physical device on the screen. And when I click on this, I'm going to actually see the next record here. I'm going to take this and edit the record. Click Save. It's going to save and synchronize. And we go back here, and then if I'm looking at the proper one here, I believe this is the one that we created. I'm looking at the right one. Yep. Actually, it just updated. It's just synchronized.
Right.
So basically, whoop, gotta make sure I don't hit that button. In the web page, I need to actually, I do this sometimes, go for that little arrow button up there by mistake when I really actually need to go back in my application, not the browser. So anyways, we're going to actually also demonstrate how I can disconnect this application and make changes, and those changes will actually work. Let me switch over here to airplane mode. So my app is now in airplane mode.
But it's still talking to your computer because it's plugged into the USB cable, isn't it? That's how
Yes,
it's mirroring.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And here's my application. I'm going to launch it up again here. Just to show you, give it a little heads up on what we're going to be doing. Let's go to Anders here. Let's add an S again. Do a save.
And that synchronize button lights up, but you can't synchronize because you're offline now.
Yes, so I synchronize, nothing's going to happen here. If I back up, I can see, all right, I'm offline, so this is not going to work.
So that little mark indicates you've made a change, but that change hasn't been synchronized yet.
Exactly. So I'm going to go back to my phone device, go back to my settings, and flip that off of airplane mode, so now I have internet connection again. And like you said, I'm connected directly with a cable here using MobiZen. That's why I can see two little MobiZens here. One is for the actual cable connected, and one is for internet connected. But with it being in airplane mode, you're not going to see the internet connection. So I'm going to go back to my app once more. And this time when it opens, I'm going to click Synchronize. As you can see, that little yellow thing went away. I'm going to go over to my browser, the one hosted at ZebraHost, Synchronize All. And there's my change right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is added. So this is what we're going to build today.
All right.
Alrighty. So let me open up Demo 4. This is the demo that we created last week. So I'm going to open up Demo 4. And we're going to take what we created last week, and we're going to make this, add some features to it to get the whole effect that we just did today. This is using, demo was created using that exact data that we created last week, that exact application. Now, the first thing I want to do is we actually, when we did this, we created an ADO connection string, and that was to Northwind database, but the Northwind database was local. And we created this data connection, but we really didn't use this data connection. We showed this after the fact. We're actually pointing directly to the local file here, but I'm going to create a new, so I have both of them. We'll call this MySQL, because I'm connected to MySQL, Northwind. I'm going to do a build, and I'm going to create a connection string for a MySQL database. And so I don't have to go in and type a lot of things here. I am going to, there it is, open this to get my host name.
So to be clear, what we're interested in doing is instead of having the data being kept locally on your developer machine, you want to have it up someplace where it can be accessible. And so,
yes.
So this is hosted. Where is this hosted, by the way? Is this up at GoDaddy?
This is hosted up at GoDaddy.
Is there any way we could take a look at that?
We can,
okay.
Sure. Let's see. I actually went there this morning. Here's GoDaddy. Let me just sign in to my account. Now I have a web hosting on my account, so I'm going to click on Manage. Hopefully it won't take forever. Okay, I'm going to click on Manage here again. And I should get a listing of all of the options that I have, including the databases I can connect to. And we do.
And GoDaddy is just one of many, many, many internet service providers that will allow you to host databases that you can connect to through the web. So that's
exactly. So even though the Northwind database is a Microsoft Access database, I basically created the scripts to basically be able to build it in another database. So I used my SQL database, and I created this online, MySQL at GoDaddy account. So this is that name that I was copying from over there, and this is my username to get in. Password I'll type in. But this is what I didn't want to type in because you can make some errors when you're trying to type in something long like this. So, but this is where I created the Northwind database, which is a copy of the Access database. So I'm going to close this for now. Free up some of my bandwidth. Copy this and paste this in here, and I got a space at the end, so I'm going to delete that. The next thing I want is going to be the login name, username, Alpha Northwind, and the password. And let's see if I typed that in correctly. I'm going to click Test Connection, and we did succeed. Next, I'm going to click on Refresh, so I get the tables. Information Schema is a table that gets created automatically when you create a MySQL database. The database that I'm actually connected to is going to be Alpha Northwind. So I'm going to click OK. Click OK again. And you see it's my connection string, and I'm just going to close this and go back to my UI control. First place I need to go in and redirect everything here is in my lists control. As you can see, we connected directly to the database without using a connection string name or a named connection string. So I'm going to select this, use a named connection string, and click select, and you'll see my choices that were there. This was the one we created last week, connected to my local database. This is the one connected to my remote database. Then click OK. OK again. And There's one more place that I need to make that change. I'm going to click OK. Just close this for a minute. Click on my properties. If you watched last week, or if you go back and look at the video, you'll see where we had to create a JavaScript action here. So I'm going to edit the action where we get the detail of the record that's selected, and then we actually select the panel to show you the detail.
You had to populate the controls from a data source, and this time the data source has changed. So here we just changed that.
Again, use name connection string, select Northwind, click OK, click OK, OK again. We're going to save that, click OK, and I'm going to take a quick look at this right now and make sure that my connection is working. So the only thing I've really changed is where it's pointing to for the database right now, and there it is.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we left off last week, and what we're going to add is we're going to add some more controls to this so you can actually edit the data and save the data. I mean, you can edit the data, but you can't really save any of your changes right now. So I'm going to go back to design mode, and first thing I'm going to want to do is go to my panel header here, the end panel header.
For panel card 2 for this.
Panel card 2.
Yeah.
For the detailed view. So I want to insert something right at the end here. So I'm going to close this down and open up Define Controls. And you'll see under here we have a List Detailed View buttons. That's what I'm going to select. When I select that, I get this list, and this list is the list 1 that I created right here. And it gives me lots of options here. Select the buttons to add to this component. So Alpha is going to write the code that I need to do a save for this particular list control. So I can click Save because I want a Save button. And then I also want to synchronize all of the changes because I could edit more than one record at one time. I'm going to click a Synchronize All.
There are quite a few other buttons you could add here too. You could say, oh, I want to undo edits because I made a mistake. Of course, we have the Synchronize button, which is the one you selected.
The new record.
Button. Yep, create a new record. Delete the record that you're on. So those are all predefined things. You just
all predefined options that you can click on, and Alpha will write the code for you. So I'm going to click OK. And you can see those buttons are added. I'm going to go back to my header for panel card 1 because I don't have a synchronize on this page, so I can do a synchronize before I go in and edit a record in case somebody just made editing changes to that record ahead of me. So I want to make sure I have the latest so we don't have to sync up afterwards, which we could sync up afterwards. Even if there were differences, it would show me that there were differences. But in this case, I'm just going to add another for list 1, synchronize all button, and click OK. And it's just giving a warning that there's already a component on here with that name right now, and it just renamed the new one, put a 1 at the end of it. Click OK. There we go. And now I'm going to click on other controls and just put a tab stop between the two of those so we have a little space. So I'm going to show you what Alpha created for you. There's a synchronize all. I'm going to switch to a wider device here so it all fits in much more nicely. I could just change that to synchronize it whenever I have the text. Click on that component, that record. Make a change. I'm going to remove that S and click Save. Now, it didn't synchronize because I didn't set something up, but I will go back and set that up shortly here. So I'm going to click back to design mode. Click on the list component again. Now I want to do some things here. I want to go to my list properties. I want to say persist data to local storage. In my detail view, I want to create a synchronization policy here, which client to server synchronization I'm going to check, and server to client synchronization. I'm going to select both of those.
When you're setting this up, when you're yourself, go ahead and read those options. It does do a good job of explaining how synchronization works, just to give you a better concept of it.
You want to read this off, or just let everybody know it's
No, just know that it's there. You'll need to click on this box, check both those boxes, but it's actually kind of useful to read the text.
Okay. I thought you were asking me to read it.
No.
Okay. All right. So that's done. Let's see. We'll click OK. There's one other place I need to do some synchronization to, or persist data locally, and that's in the properties. If I scroll down, you'll see we have this local storage section right here. And in this local storage section, I want to persist variable values. I'm going to hand back out so it's a little easier to click. I'm going to persist component state. That's going to give me another some more choices here. Restore variables from local storage, restore data list controls from local storage, and restore data from local storage.
So just so people understand what that means, whenever you have a web page, the browser will set aside an area called local storage. For most browsers, that gives you about 5 megabytes of space, which is actually a great deal of space if you're just using text and numbers. So local storage is great for handling smaller amounts of data. But the benefit is, and even though we'll be using PhoneGap today, you don't really need to use PhoneGap to use local storage. In other webinars, we'll show you how to use what's called the file system. The device's file system gives you access to gigabytes and gigabytes of memory, depending on how big the device is, whether it's a phone or a tablet or something like that. But today we'll be using local storage. I just want to make sure you understand the difference between local storage, which is what your browser will give you on any device, and file system, which is actually writing files to the solid-state hard drive of the device.
Right. So I basically opened up the application again. This I'm going to again save my change it to enter. Click save, and this time is synchronized because of all the changes that I just made, and it's good to go. So my changes are all synchronized here. This is not going to synchronize with the one that I created earlier that is posted right now, because this is actually a brand new application that I'm creating, but it's synchronizing with the database local here on my machine. The local storage on my machine, and synchronizing with my database, which is at GoDaddy. Okay, next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to do a publish. So I'm going to publish a Zebra host. Select publish. And over here, there's a little pencil over here in the corner. Add edit profiles. So I'm going to click on that. And to save a little time, I'm going to pull in a previous profile that I created, which has all my information to connect to my Zebra host. And I call that persist data. So I was able to save this when I created it before. Click OK. And we're going to call this alpha demo. Remember that name, Dave?
All right, I will.
We're going to call it alpha demo. Click OK. And this is what we brought in. So this is settings that I saved before. One of the things I want to check is my named alpha DAL connections. Make sure everything is good there. So I'm going to double click on that. And as you see, we have alpha demo and on Northwind database. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to change this to alpha demo, because that's where I want all my objects and my data and files to go to. I'm going to uncheck the publish data files because my data files are actually at a remote location, so I really don't need that. So I'm going to check that. So we have alpha demo. Everything looks good here. I'm going to click OK. Select the newly created alpha demo profile. I'm going to publish all files. And I didn't show, but I also had it selected to use an external FTP application. So I'm going to click publish.
I'll explain why we decided to go that route in a moment.
And I just want to make sure. I'm glad I checked this because I forgot to do one thing. And that is
you
to add
forgot
our
to build an index
file.
page. Yeah.
Yes,
So now, up until now, we've just been working with components. But in real life, when you deploy your application, the server is going to look not for a component, but for an A5W page, a web page. And this web page will have one or more components built into it. So what Chris is going to do is he's just going to build a really simple web page, a really simple A5W page, choose from the list there, and he's going to insert that component so that it's ready to be deployed in a hosted environment.
So I'm going to save this as index, normal name for a startup page. Click save. And up here in the toolbar, you'll see there is an insert a component. So I'm going to click insert component. And when I do that, I click select. And here is the US component that we created last week that we just did some modifications to. So I'm going to select that, click OK. OK again. I'm going to save that. Go back to my publish. All files, alpha demo. This time we have an index, so I'm going to click publish. I'm going to double check it just in case. This is why I knew. You see all the files that it's going to be uploading here. And there it is right there. That's my alpha 5 index. My index.a5w file. So I'm going to click OK. And this gives me a path to where all the files are created. So I'm going to just right click and copy that. Go over to my Windows tools here and click Core FTP.
Now, Core FTP you can download for free. WSTP is another one. There's also Qt FTP. They're all good FTP programs, often very robust, can work with different types of servers. We do have an FTP built into Alpha Anywhere, but we find that sometimes it doesn't work that smoothly. It's a slightly older component, so we allow people to go this method, which you'll see is actually pretty easy to publish, and I'll let you choose what type of FTP that you want to use.
So anyways, that's something that I already had connected, information to connect to my Zebra host. That was all the FTP information I needed to enter. I'm going to paste that path, click enter, and this is actually my local C drive. I see I have an Alpha 5 web root. I also have an Alpha 5 web root on host. Under this Alpha 5 web root, I have Alpha Demo, which has all my files. This is what I want to publish to the Zebra host. So I'm going to click this, and this is going to take a little while to publish. While this is going on, Dave, why don't you talk about the up-and-coming Alpha DevCon 2015?
That's actually a great idea. For those of you who are unfamiliar, haven't been to our website in a while, we are hosting a developers conference September 16th through the 19th here just outside of Boston, Burlington, Massachusetts, about 15 miles out or 10 miles outside of the city. Details are on our website. We still have discounted hotel rooms available through the beginning of August, the first week or so of August. So if you're interested and you think you'll be staying here, do try to book early. You'll save yourself a great deal of money on launching. This conference, we're going to be spending a lot of time on various things. We do always talk about desktop. We talk about web applications. We talk about mobile applications. In particular, we're going to be looking at applications that run on tablets, especially for doing data entry and field service type of applications. So that's going to be a big topic there. But it's all covered. If you go to our website, alphasoftware.com, you can read all about that there. So this is the first time we're publishing this application, so there were quite a few files that needed to be posted. When you make changes, you only need to update the files that have changed, and Alpha Anywhere keeps track of those, which we'll see in a minute. So it looks like you're down to about 15 items or so this should go pretty quickly at this point.
Here we go, there's our index 5, okay, it looks like everything's good.
Great.
The last thing it did was the main folder.
Okay.
So everything is published. So I'm going to close this out.
So in theory, we can open this up just in a web browser and see what it
Web
looks like.
browser right now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's.
So just to
We're
be
gonna
clear,
open this.
we haven't used PhoneGap yet. We haven't had to use PhoneGap, but we are going to use PhoneGap a little bit later on in today's presentation to show you how to make it a true application that'll run on a mobile device.
So I'm selecting Alpha Demo here.
Yep.
And let's see. And cool. It looks good. We're at Alpha Demo. Here's the online version.
Great.
Here's our back button. Don't let me hit that one.
And now, okay.
So cool.
Click
Everything.
it. And now go ahead and see if you can make some changes and stuff. Make sure it actually works. Not that I don't believe you, but...
Oh, you don't believe me. I know
I
you don't
don't
believe
believe
me. So we're going to put an S at the end of this one. That's my favorite letter to click. S for save.
So instead of Trujillo, it's Trujillo's. And it's saved, and then it synchronized.
Synchronized.
So,
Yep.
if you go back...
Now that synchronize button, as we saw before, would stay lit if it's in it. For some reason, it wasn't actually able to connect to the database and make the change.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to click back, and you see there's an S?
Yep. Looks good.
All right, so I'm going to say, yes, files were transferred successfully. Everything looks good. I'm going to close, and I'm going to remove the temporary files, or let Alpha remove the temporary files for me. So next thing we're going to want to do is I want to publish this to actually see it on a actual physical device. And as I showed you earlier, this is my mobile device right here.
Right. Now, alternatively, you could have just typed in the URL into the browser of the phone, right, and opened up the app that way.
I should have been able to do that.
But we don't necessarily have to do that because we're going to show you how to build a real, actual application for the device.
Yes. So I'm going to go back into Alpha. Let me close this for a second. And actually, before I do that, I want to open up a previous project here. Because, again, like your published settings, there's quite a few things you need to add to hook up to your PhoneGap account. So I'm going to click on Disconnected Web Project. This was an existing project that I have. And I'm going to copy all these files. I want to copy these config files that I created so I don't have to do all that typing. And you could do this with your own projects also.
Now, I'm sure most people on the call are familiar with PhoneGap build, but just in case this is a new term, let me explain what it does. Alpha Anywhere, as you know, builds HTML5 applications. So what it produces is a mixture of HTML and JavaScript and cascading style sheets that are all meant to run inside of a browser. Now that's fine, except that there are certain things that you can't do inside of a browser especially when you're on a mobile device. For example, you can't directly access the camera. You don't have access to the file system where you get more than 5 megabytes to play with, for example. You don't have direct access to GPS. You don't have direct access to the accelerometer and to some other things as well. What PhoneGap does is it bridges that gap between your HTML5 application and the hardware on your device, on your phone. So that's the PhoneGap portion of it. So to use PhoneGap, you need to get a PhoneGap account, which is, I know you purchased one recently, Chris. What does that run, about $100 a year or something?
It's $10 a month. However,
yep.
if you have an Adobe Cloud account, it's part of your Adobe license.
Interesting.
Adobe Cloud, so you can get it actually for free. Without that, you can get one for free, and that allows you to.
That's just for testing it out and seeing if you like PhoneGap and stuff. So yes, you can start out for free, but typically it runs you about $10 a month.
$10 a month.
The benefit is that you can then create applications that you can deploy to Android, to iOS, the iPhone series of devices, as well as to Windows. And Alpha Anywhere actually makes that easier, and Chris is going to just show you how you use that service. And in this case, we're going to deploy to an Android phone. The process for iOS would be similar. There are a couple other things you need to fill in, but it's basically the same idea. So sorry to derail you, Chris. I'll just let you continue.
So I'm just going to that folder here where you see there's already a PhoneGap projects, but there isn't the rest of the information in there. That's what I'm going to be pasting in from this old folder. So I'm going to paste that in here, overwrite, copy those files in. Like I said, this is you actually make these changes using the tool, and it saves this information for you, but you have to actually select everything that you need before one of these files gets created. So I'm just saving a little bit of time by copying a previous one that I worked with. I'm going to keep this screen zoomed down because I want to still see my device here at the same time. So I am going to scroll over and click on PhoneGap. When I click on PhoneGap, you see here's all my information that I had in there. So here's my username, my password already filled in, the name of the UX component. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, because I always forget to do that, Android, I checked that I want to create only an Android application. So it's not going to do iOS or Windows Phone here, because that's a little time consuming. And also, if you wanted to do iOS, there's some steps that you have to do. And for testing your applications, it only has to be done once. You have to create a developer's provisioning file. And you have to do that at the Apple site. And so it's a little more complicated to create an iOS and side-load it onto your own physical device. So that's why I would just do an Android. It's a little simpler. There aren't as many hoops that you have to jump through in order to get it on an actual physical device. So we're going to use that. The initial UX component, as you can see, says disconnected, but that's not the name of our UX component. It is actually demo. So I am going to click on this and select my demo UX component. And it's not actually at disconnected. It's actually at alpha demo.
If you don't fill this in properly, it won't work. So this is a sort of an important setting for it needs to know where to hit the Alpha Anywhere server.
Okay, the other thing I'm going to change here is my application ID. So this was that I changed here. This is for URL for all AJAX callbacks. So when it wants to talk to the database through Alpha, this is where the callbacks happen. So I have to point to where they are. And that is the same location that I just created on ZebraHost, which is Alpha Demo. The next thing I want to do is change this disconnected. It wouldn't break anything, but it's basically an ID for all your applications. So if you have several applications, the way you do it in iOS, Android, I believe Windows Phone is a place where it asks you for an ID, and basically what it is what people usually use is their domain name. In this case, I'm using alphasoftware.com in reverse. So it's com.alphasoftware, and then the name of your application that you want to publish.
It's just one of those quirky things that PhoneGap makes you do.
And I'm going to call this Alpha Demo, so that when I actually see it at PhoneGap, I select the correct one. So now that that's done, I'm going to do a save and upload. This doesn't take quite as long as doing a publish. So it's basically zipping up all the files that PhoneGap needs right now, and then it's uploading that to my account because of all the login information that I put in there. Once all the files are uploaded, you'll see a pop-up that'll occur here in a few seconds. That pop-up tells me that the files were uploaded. Okay, and this may take a little time because you remember that this is not just me hitting the build server. There are many people that are using this. So sometimes it takes a little longer depending on how heavy the traffic is to get your application up and get your application built. I'm able to do this right here because Alpha created all the hooks and everything you need to connect to the API for PhoneGap build.
Right. So normally, often you would log right into PhoneGap build and fill in a lot of settings, and there's actually
a lot of settings. You have to zip up your own files. You would have to upload those files. Lots of things you would have to do. Alpha is doing for you by all those selections.
So we're here to save you some time.
Yeah, and there was actually some checkboxes. I forgot to show, but I'll go back in a bit and I'll show you some other checkboxes settings that we made in order to make this work. So I'm going to click OK. This might actually have done it by now because while I was sitting here waiting and explaining that, it was actually still working in the background.
Yeah.
And there it is, Alpha Demo. It's actually complete.
Cool.
It's done. If I click on that, it's going to give me a QR code. I'm going to select my device, and I'm going to delete any downloads that I've done. Sometimes I name things the same. and I am going to select an application. This is a free application for scanning the QR code on an Android device, and you see that right here. I can actually, with this tool, it's very cool. It's a very cool tool to look at. It's called Mobizen, M-O-B-I-Z-E-N, and this actually allows me to control my phone with the mouse. So I can click on this and it'll open the application. I am going to go back.
But this is a real phone, not a simulator. You're looking. I mean, you're looking at what is Chris is actually seeing on his phone. Oh, there you go. And now through his camera.
And there we go. So now you can see the open browser. I'm gonna slow down a little here because it takes some time for my phone to display on my screen. Then it's time for that to display on your screen. So I'm gonna close this out for now.
So I see the open browser button.
Yep, I'm gonna click open in browser. And guess what? We have a little advertisement. I'm gonna click on that to go back. This is free. We sometimes have advertisements that'll pop up. I'm going to click OK.
And that's a warning.
And as you can see, it's downloading. Can you see that?
Yep.
It's downloading. Download is complete. You can see the download complete.
I see it's 101 in Mesa today. Wow.
Yeah.
It's not get hot, huh?
It's not that hot in my office. Okay, so I've successfully downloaded it, and I'm going to install it now. It's going to give me some warnings, letting me know that there are certain things that this application wants access to. I trust myself 100%, so I'm going to say, okay, no problem, install. It's installing the application. It is now installed. I'm going to click open. And here's the device, the application that we just created.
Fabulous.
And click, and there's my records. Detail, click on enter, there's my record detail.
So let's see if we can make some changes and synchronize and have it actually work.
Sure, I just want to make sure I'm on the right one again here, the alpha demo.
Yeah.
So, bring this in a little closer together here. So I'm going to, on my device, click on enter, and I'm going to actually click on the field, which brings up my keyboard on my device. I'm actually going to click it on here because it's a little easier. Click in S to modify it, so you can see that S is not there on the other one. So we click save. And there we go, synchronize, save and synchronize. If I come over here to this, I see that I forgot to do something. I forgot to tell it to synchronize all. I forgot to change that out. So I'm going to go back in here, to my application, and I am going to show you where it is a lot faster when you upload it the second time. What happened, actually, I could actually just go make a change over there and this would work, but I just want to show you something that I forgot to do.
Yeah, so let's see what happens. In real life, you're going to publish some version of your application and say, oh, I made some mistakes. We'll fix the mistake, and then we'll show you how to fix it quickly.
And that mistake that I made was I forgot to go in here and tell it to, number one, enable expression. I don't want that enabled. I want this button to be enabled all the time, not only when I make a change.
Yep.
And I'm going to get rid of these things right here also, the images, to point to when it's enabled and disabled. And I'm going to save that. I'm going to come back here, do a publish again to publish.
And so this way, that synchronize button will always be lit up, and you'll always be able to use it, not just if there's been some change on the client. Because who knows, there might be a change on the server, you wouldn't be able to pick that up. So we've got, so you have it covered both ways.
Yes, both ways. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to actually publish. And you see this is going to happen a whole lot faster this time, as Dave said. We're going to prove it now.
All right,
exactly. Faster. It's not like this was planned or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to connect, and I'm just going to go back up one inch just so I can see that my data is actually good. So I'm going to click A5 and click the upload arrow.
Now instead of the 1,500 files, it's 53 files.
So I'm going to say overwrite if newer all. Click on that. So this is going to happen a lot faster.
20 items, 15 items, 10. And done. Way faster.
We're still well within our hour here. I thought it was going to take a lot longer, to tell you the truth.
Exactly. We need to do more ambitious next time.
Yes.
We do have a few questions to get to at the end, which is
okay.
Cool,
so I got that closed, so I'm going to refresh this now. And as you see, my synchronize all is now enabled.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to synchronize all. And there's my S. There's a change that just happened.
Now, you didn't update the PhoneGap version of it, right?
No, I didn't, so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to show you.
So notice that the button is shut off here. We always want to have it turned on, so that was our mistake, but now that we've fixed it in Alpha Anywhere, we just need to push it back up to PhoneGap again.
So I'm going to save and upload to PhoneGap build again. I'm going to close out. I'm going to go delete the one that I just downloaded, so it doesn't complain. This is why I go in there and do that. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have showed you the screen while I was doing this. So this is again uploading. And this time you'll actually get to see what occurs in the background, because as I was talking last time, now you can see the screen that pops up here, and you see that it's pending. I told it to skip the iOS build, and I told it to skip the WinPhone build. So it's only doing the Android application right now. Now, if it doesn't get finished in a lot of time, it will rerun again. So it's going to refresh data, and it didn't finish, so it has to run through it again. Go ahead, Dave. I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, this just has to do with how busy the PhoneGap build server is. But often with these Android apps, it's not very long. It's no more than a minute typically. And let's see, did it build? Yep, it's complete. Great.
I'm going to click on that. Open up my QR scanner again. Open it in the browser. Click OK. And as you see, we had pizza last night at Barrow's Pizza. It was good.
This isn't product placement, right? You're not being paid for that?
No.
Okay.
Okay, it's downloaded, so I'm going to install it again. Do you want to install update? You can say yes, install. So it's going to update it so that I already had an existing edition of this on here. I didn't actually remove the app. Click open. And this time, as you can see, my synchronize all is enabled. So I am going to close this out and go back so I can show you both screens at the same time. And this time, we're going to do this something a little differently. I'm going to go to my device, and I am going to, because I don't know where it is here. Actually, there it is. I'm going to click on this little thing, and I'm going to click on my system settings. So that's going to bring up my system settings, and on my Android device, I have what's called an airplane mode. I'm going to tell it to put it into airplane mode. This turns off all communications so that if I'm on an airplane, I can't use my phone, I can't use the internet or anything, so I'm going to click on that. So I'm going to show that this is actually going to be disconnected now. I'm going to reopen my application, and that was Alpha Anywhere. Actually, it was on the first screen, yeah, Alpha Demo. So I'm now disconnected, as you can see up here with the little symbol of the airplane here. So I'm going to go back to Anders, and I'm going to get rid of that S. Backspace, and I'm going to click Save. Give it a little time here. As you can see, it's not synchronizing. The synchronize all is still lit. That's because it's unable to actually go sync the data. Click the back button. I can see, oh, right there, that data has not been able to be published.
A little mark up at the top right to indicate that
exactly.
It hasn't been changed. Yep.
So I'm actually going to go down here, and I'm going to actually change another record here. I'm going to put an S at the end of that one also, because it's my favorite letter, I guess. And click Save. And again, it's not updating. So now you can see I have two records here that have not been updated. And if I synchronize all here, nothing's going to happen because
You're still in airplane mode.
It's still in airplane mode. So I'm going to close out of my application. My flight is done. I'm getting off the plane. I have internet connection again. So I'm going to turn off airplane mode. And before I get in my taxi cab to go home, I am going to open up my application again. And I want to sync up all the changes that I just made. So I'm going to click Synchronize All. And as you can see, the little marks up here in the corner went away, saying that was synchronized. And I'm going to actually go over to my online application, Synchronize All. The S is going there, and the S is added there.
Great. Very nice.
Now, what would happen if we were both editing something at the same time?
You know, someone asked that exact question. What if multiple people are editing not just the same field, not just the same record, but the same field? Maybe they're both offline, or maybe one person's online and one person's offline. What happens then?
Okay, so, well, I am going to do that.
Excellent.
So I'm going to select enter again. I am going to put an S in it. Again, click Save. Go back. I can see my S here, but I don't see it over here because I haven't done the synchronize. I'm going to actually open that record now here. I haven't closed anything. I haven't synced. And I'm going to say, well, no, it's not an S. It's a T, whatever. We'll put a letter in there. So letter, enter it.
All right.
And we're going to do a save.
Aha. Now I see it's highlighted in red, which
Exactly, the
indicates
conflict.
a right conflict.
Now, had I done this first, I would have seen that same message over here saying, there is a right conflict. If I had done the save over here. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to see that, okay, well, yes, my change, I added a T. However, theirs, somebody added an S. And I'm going to say, well, Anders doesn't sound right. Anders sounds a little better. So I'm going to keep their changes.
Mm-hmm. Now that's the default behavior. So when you have a conflict. So for example, if two people are editing the same record, they both go and save whoever saves first, they're sure their data is committed to the table, but the second person does have the option to change it back with that sort of intelligent conflict resolution you saw there. You can also just say, look, whoever's the last person in, or even the first person in, that's always going to be it. So the server can always be the winner, whatever it has on file, just use that and don't prompt the user if you want to do it that way. There may be some business case for that. You also have the ability of handling it programmatically. You might be able to say, well, look, if this is a field service technician on this field, they should have priority because they're the people who are actually out on the field typing in the stuff. Or if this person's a manager, what they type in should be allowed to override people below them. You can handle all of that programmatically within Alpha Anywhere. So, but by default, it asks you. Cool.
That's pretty much the demo, Dave. Do you have any other questions?
We do. So we just talked a little bit about overwriting data. Oh yeah, a couple people had mentioned, okay, you guys said something about GoDaddy and said something about ZebraHost, and so we wanted to say that today's data, in case you missed it, I know a couple people actually tuned in a little late, is actually not being hosted at the same place that the application is being hosted. We're actually put this onto GoDaddy. There are, like I said, many other internet service providers as well that you can use. You could certainly use Microsoft's SQL Azure, which is a very popular solution from cloud-based solution from Microsoft, which we connect to directly, just using a connection string like Chris showed you how to do earlier today. So you don't have to keep it. Now you do optionally, you can put both the database server and the Alpha application server together on one server. That's not at all uncommon, but if you want to split it out, you can do that too.
And you also don't necessarily, I believe, have to do your callbacks through Alpha Server. If you have a web service, you can also use a web service to communicate and get your data. That way, you won't actually
instead of a SQL Server connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You'd be using a web service in order to get your data. So that way, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
You can use pre-existing web services that you have out there to get your data. So you don't necessarily have to publish to ZebraHost for that to happen. But that's a different topic another day on
Yes.
you know, connecting to web services.
So another question here, another couple of questions really having to do with offline. The first has to do with that mobile button. Let's say you like the idea of building an offline application, but you're planning on just using it on your laptop or your netbook. In other words, a full-sized screen device. Should you check or uncheck that little mobile box? And actually, why don't we talk about what that mobile box does? So today we've been building something that's optimized for a phone. You could certainly build out your panel cards and things that are optimized for a bigger space. The point behind the mobile checkbox, and go ahead and uncheck that if you would, and then do a working preview. So yep, there's the mobile box. All it does is, go ahead and hit working preview, is it just tells the preview device whether or not it should include that sort of mock-up of a phone or of an iPhone or of a tablet or of a Nexus or whatever. When you uncheck it, it just assumes that you're building a web application. It doesn't actually change any of the underlying code. It just changes how it appears in the preview window so that it's easier for you to work with it. So I think that hopefully that'll answer your question. So it doesn't matter if you have it turned on. Chances are you want to have it turned off if you're not planning on doing mobile stuff.
So this is our working preview. It pretty much looks the same
yeah.
as
But you might design it differently.
Yeah.
You might decide, oh, I can fit a lot more information on this form. I could do multiple columns. I could do a lot, a bigger header up at the top. There are other things that you can get away with on a laptop or a notebook because you have more screen real estate. The other question had to do with, we talked about PhoneGap being able to access the file system, which is a really helpful thing, but that's only true on a mobile device. Do we still have that basically for a laptop or a netbook? Are you still limited to basically the 5 megabytes of local storage? As far as I know, actually you are, if you're doing it as a browser-based application. Now there's some other things that can be plugged in to a laptop or a notebook, such as SQLite. We've been working on that recently, and if you want to get some more information about it, just send me an email over to guides@alphasoftware.com, and we can help find you some more information about what happens when you want to work offline with a laptop or a netbook that's running a full operating system and doesn't have the ability to have PhoneGap. So again, just guides@alphasoftware.com. I will look into that. I do know that we've been working on that over the past few weeks, and we've made some great progress, which we'll be able to share with you.
As you know, they say, Dave, sometimes out of sight, out of mind, and that happened. This is when I was showing the PhoneGap. I mentioned I was going to get back to this later on, and I just remembered to get back to it. I didn't scroll all the way down here to show you all the different options, and some of these are checked automatically. But there's some settings that I needed to have set, like device, network information, push notifications, and SQLite plugin. These are some PhoneGap settings that I need to have to say. I had to tell PhoneGap, hey, I'm going to be using these things. And there's lots of other things. You have your barcode scanner, calendar, all these different options that you have here that you can select for the different devices. And then there are also some specifics, which, this is the PhoneGap. These are the third party. There are also some specifics if I selected Android, iOS, and also Windows Phone.
Now, Chris, I know in an application you were building, for the developers conference, you wanted to have the ability to connect to the device's calendar, like you wanted to allow someone to save something right to their calendar. Was that a special setting that you needed to do, or is that one of those default?
Yes, it was actually the calendar that we saw here. There was this calendar setting is what I use in order to be able to talk to the calendar on the device.
Great.
And that's a third-party PhoneGap plugin.
Actually, we'd love to go over that calendar, that PhoneGap, that conference application in a future webinar. What we've built, I think, will be very impressive to many of you out there. And and is available. We have one version available right now on the Apple Store and the Android Store, but we have a newer one that will be coming out probably in the next few days or so that'll have more features.
Those that are familiar, the first version that went out there was a developer version that got published. This next version is going to be a designer's version.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So developers are good at getting the application created, then you have your designers that are wonderful at actually making your application look good.
Yeah, so it's a really nice thing, and we're going to provide the source code for you as well, that you'll be allowed to use it and pull it apart for your own reasons, your own uses.
And as I said, when I selected those other checkboxes, you can see we have some things here: Android only, iOS only, and these are some options that are only available on the particular platforms. And I didn't see those until I actually clicked and said, okay, yeah, I'm on iOS and Windows Phone also. It didn't have to say Android only because that's all we were doing was Android.
Right.
So anyway, this is your PhoneGap setup. You have your any required PhoneGap plugins that you need and any third-party plugins that you need.
Yep.
And I guess as things get created for third-party, I guess Alpha will eventually be adding more things in future versions to this. So any other cool things that work great with, you don't want to just grab any third-party plugin out there and include them. So sometimes these things don't work. But I'm sure most of them are pretty good if they went through PhoneGap. But
sounds good. So here's a good question. If multiple users are using the same application, can you have a connection string that's dynamically changed for a particular user? In other words, I am user A, and I want to connect to this database, and there's user B, and they should connect to another database. And the answer is yes, you can. In the web component itself, when you define a connection string, that connection string can be dynamically changed before it's loaded. That's something you would have to program on the XBasic side, but it's something that we can handle and we can help you do if you wanted some assistance with that. Another great question here. We're sort of running out of time, but this has to do back with conflict resolution. Right now, if you run into a conflict resolution, it says use mine or use theirs. Well, if you don't know, sometimes you'd like to know who theirs is. Is it use Chris's, is it use Dave's or Adam's or whomever? That is something, we can't change it. There isn't an automatic setting for that, but you can do coding and you can customize that message. So if you want to pull a value from a table, like for example a table which keeps track of who was the last person to update a record, you could customize that message and say, use Chris Martin's version instead of use mine, for example. There's a question about hydration. For those of you unfamiliar with hydration in PhoneGap, it has two benefits, at least according to PhoneGap. The first is that it compiles a little bit quicker when you use the hydration feature. The second thing is, and this is really the big deal, is that it allows you to automatically push updates of your application down to a person's device. So it stops people from using out-of-date copies of your software. Whether or not you want to use it, it's something we do support, but whether you want to use it is up to you, and it just has to do with, how comfortable you are with forcing everyone to update. If you're talking about a small group of people, it's probably fine, but it's just a call you want to make. You can do it either way. We do know people who do use that feature and do like it. Someone had mentioned that a good session would be talking about design. So talking about a designer, he says, what about holding a designer session to use third-party templates? I'm sure Bootstrap Wrap would probably be a pretty popular one for people to look into now that they have a lot of mobile options. And yes, we are very interested in doing a designer session. So thank you for reminding me of that again. I'm going to make sure that gets bumped up in terms of priority for upcoming sessions. So let's see what else we've got. I think that is it for this week. If there's something I didn't get to, please send an email to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, @alphasoftware.com. A copy of today's webinar, like the other webinars we've done, will be available at videos.alphasoftware.com. Usually takes about 2 days to get those posted. And next week, we'll be back with Dion. He's returning from vacation. I know he's missed you guys. And he will be covering more Q&A, and I think he's got a demo to show off as well at the very beginning of that. In the meantime, I hope you have a great week, and we hope to see you at future webinars. Take care, and goodbye.